Now we are on 3, which is the Invisible Theater. How about that?
So Invisible Theater, for those of you who did or did not get to enjoy that, there were 3 phases, and Merl was arguably part of phase 2, according to a lot of the experts. But it was sort of like a Monty Python troupe. Very political, very clued in, university edgy stuff. You know, Hal helping do the scripts, you know, and poster work, and Merl dragging in other musicians, etc. So there were a lot of great productions. Again, this is a work in progress. We actually have much better stuff in the director's room. We actually have the posters and scripts and other evidence and so on. So Brick Burnside was one of the famous ones. Mad Dog is another great one that was there, and a lot of the people went on to even better things. In California and New York, Scott went to New York, Scott Carter went to LA, went to HBO, etc. Hal went to San Francisco and became a renowned, I want to call him underground artist. I hope that's not demeaning, but I know him as that in the Bay Area in San Francisco. Then likewise, Dennis Hacken, one of the founders, also went off and did some Clint Eastwood movies, etc. So it was a fertile breeding ground, if you want to call it that. And also when we look at, again, the artwork, these are university students. These are people on the edge through whatever substances, however they got there. Okay, so we have a lot of artwork in the director's version. We have a lot of reviews, the poster work, thanks to Hal, and likewise Larry Harnish in LA, who archived a lot of this and shared it with us. And even again, the puzzles became part of the musicals, part of the Invisible Theater as an ongoing theme. And this is Summer of '74, a song by Bryan Adams or somebody. There's Merl on the top. And that was the family, the Invisible Theater back then, Ken Kesey and crew. And so now we're going to pass it back to Tim to do our several remembrances for the Invisible Theater period.
And we will start with Bob Campbell, the man whose words propelled this theater, our dramaturge and our chief playwright.
Comrades, let's have a round for Major Smack. Maestros Carter and Hacken, everyone is here. I wish I could sing, which is really the way you should talk about Merl. He had conversations in music. I remember talking to him, and he would sit down at the piano and play something like the theme from The Conformist. That was his answer. And you can't top that. You can't top that. But if this were an IT meeting, we'd all be up here talking at the same time, which is really the way to do it. But I asked to go before Hal because that duplicates actually sort of the way we worked in the IT. I remember the first time I ever got a song out of Merl was Scott and I wrote a play called Careless. And I said, we gotta have a song about buggering. We gotta have a song about buggering. And Scott said, oh, all right. And we went off to Hal and Merl. The next day we had a big buggering production number in Act 2. And Merl didn't blink. I mean, of course, naturally, that's how we worked. But the sad thing, I mean, I had a lot of contact with Merl. We were on a bunch of shows. He was like the Beethoven Beach Boy. He was just genius on the hoof. And we ran through a lot of other kinds of contacts because I was running a movie theater where he had his cartoon and horror movie festival. And then later on, I'm a movie critic in New York, and guess what I get to review? You know, a crossword puzzle movie with Merl, who's larger than life, which he always was. But the sad thing about, or good thing about the IT, the way we would put our musicals together was, I'd write it, then I'd sort of sketch out where the songs went and put a title on it and some lyrics. And then I would hand it to Hal, and then Hal and Merl would go off and do the actual creating. I'd come into the rehearsal next day and find out what my show was about, which is a fantastic way to do it. So that's why I asked to be a little ahead of Hal so we could build up to Merl. And there is no higher place you can go than Hal Robbins.
Thank you, Bob. Well, here we are, and I was asked the other night, how did we write the songs? Did I give Merl the lyrics first, or Merl give me the music first? And the fact is, we did it both ways. It depends. And Merl was just anxious to get it done. His ego was not great. And he would even allow me to give him parts of tunes, which he would happily weave into his songs. And the first song I wrote for the Invisible Theater that I can remember was Them Stagecoach Blues for Oates, which Scott Carter wrote. And I wrote that, and I worked with Merl on it, and then I came in to see it. At that time, I had this horrible job as a truck driver, but I came to the university campus, and there was everybody performing this song that I'd written with the greatest elan and wonderful choreography. You were in it, Tim, and everyone was dancing perfectly, and I thought, wow, I've got to get out of where I am. And also, Scott showed me a wonderful play that he had written called Mectoto, and so I quit the awful but lucrative job that I had and became the art bum that I am today, struggling to meet. There's so much that could be said about Invisible Theater. I also had connection with it in doing posters and graphics for it, along with Charlie Oldham, a great friend of mine, and everybody. Charlie died a few years ago. He had gone to Maine as part of his adventurous life, and he ran off with the minister's wife, created a scandal. He had a great radio show where he played the old R&B hits that he loved, and everyone loved it so much. Stephen King was a listener, and mourned along with everyone when Charlie died. And there was an editorial cartoon showing his tombstone and people crying. But to get back to Merl, when Merl joined the Arizona Daily Star, he replaced, as a copywriter, Charles Finney, who wrote The Circus of Dr. Lowe, The Magician Out of Manchuria, all sorts of wonderful things. And in the old days of newspapers, before the digital world, if you wanted to know something, the one way to find out is call the newspaper office, and there'd be some knowledgeable person there who could give you the answer. And I understand that person was often Merl. But although Merl was loyal to the paper, he was also more loyal to his friends. And here we have with us Dennis Hacken, who started the Invisible Theater, who also he wrote some movies. He wrote one of Clint Eastwood's best movies. And he also wrote a movie called Wanda Nevada, which is quite interesting. It was given a snarky review, I think by Jackie Tully, I don't really know, in the Arizona Daily Star. And this offended Merl so much that he took out a full-page ad in the Star entitled A Response to a Review, where he went down the page rebutting all the claims that had been made in the review at his own expense, because Merl was loyal above all. He was also self-effacing, and he would often not appear on stage, but he'd be playing his music from behind the scenes. Even his puzzle column for the Wildcat didn't have his picture. It had a picture of a brain with glasses. And for the last show that we ever did for the Invisible Theater, Let Us Now Praise the Good Old Days, that was in the community center, he actually delivered his music from off stage. You couldn't see Merl and the musicians at all. But if I may say, that show's got a glowing review, finally, from Micheline Keating in The Citizen. She used to start off as if she was giving us a great review, and we would be encouraged, until later on in the review there would be a sting where she would say, and then came the second act, or something like that. But for Let Us Now Praise, she gave it an unqualified good review. And so when Merl went off to San Francisco, he called me and he said I should come out there and work with him on songs. And I did go out, and I'm there still, trapped by rent control, while Merl went on to other things. And we wrote some songs, but we never put them in plays, and I got into some theater things that I'm doing out there separately. But certainly he was a great impetus. And Merle and I also ran film programs, I have to say. There's a poster for one of them out there, but in San Francisco at the El Rey Theater, we ran programs. And we often brought in some of the rare monster movies that Merle liked and other cultish movies. The El Rey was a magnificent theater with the hugest screen in California at that time. I'm sorry to say it's now been taken over by Jesus freaks, and they don't even show movies, they just inhabit the building. But we were quite familiar with the films that were shown, and one of them that we liked was Jacques Tourneur's Night of the Demon, which is called in America Curse of the Demon. And we knew so much about the movie. We knew that the director had died, despairing that the full uncut version that hadn't been hacked by the studio no longer existed. As we sat in the theater, we both realized simultaneously what we were seeing was the lost, complete version. Scenes that we'd only read about were coming up on the screen. And in great excitement, when it was over, we went up the aisle and said, "Do you know what you've got here? You know, this is a lost classic." And they said, "Well, it is 125 minutes longer than whatever it was." And so that picture that Columbia had just unknowingly struck from a print in their vault became the complete version. And sad to say, I think it has now unsurfaced. And just recently they were showing the cut-up version on Turner Movie Classics. But this is the way of things. We also ran the Prostitutes Film Festival in San Francisco for Coyote, Call Off Your Old Tired Ethics, and Arab film festivals and all sorts of things. Merle would call me from time to time, and we would have chats, always enjoyable. It's so amazing to think that he's gone because he was so vital. But if you get his books and you do the puzzles, you are in contact with his mind. And this is a very wonderful thing. The last thing I ever got from Merle in the mail was a metal octopus. Don't ask me why, but it's one of my prized possessions among many. So, well, that's from our poster. I also did a poster early on for Greylock Mansion. That was how I ran into Bill Ball for the first time. So that confused relation of events is what I've got.
Thank you. And I'm sorry to say, my old friend Rebecca, you have to follow Hal.
So cruel, this thing that doesn't work.
Oh, it works. It works. You just need, it's
we're not
working.
using it. No, that's okay. A little anecdote about Merle and coffee and kindness. He came into town once and called and said, "I'm in town. Why don't I come by and we'll have coffee? You have coffee?" I said, yes, I have coffee. He said, "You have cream?" I said, "I don't, I have milk." And he says, "Well, whole milk?" And I said, "Well, no." 2%? I said, "No, I have skim milk, Merle. Will you still come?" And he said, "Well, normally that's a deal breaker." But I guess I'll come. So he came, he had skim milk in his coffee, and that's how he was. You know, he put up with the shortcomings of his friends. He was always kind, and he was always loving. So.
And next, we have Paige Burkholder. And first of all, thank you, Aaron. Aaron's got to run.
So trust us, there is a great PDF, the director's cut with Scott and everybody's participation. And it has wonderful material, download, click on it, and it's heaven.
So if you have material, actually talk to Scott or I at this point. And Paige, you want to stay here so we'll get tape?
Another quick story. I was just looking at the Brick Burnside poster. 4, 5 performances? These are huge parts of my memory, these shows. Enormous. And they run for 5 days. Really, the lyrics and the songs are so stuck in my head for years. But I wanted to talk a little about Vienna Play, which actually is a Scott Carter play. And I think the entire cast is here, except for Charlie Oldham. And Charlie would be here if he could, I know. But Molly, Rebecca, Susie, Susan, I think.
Third wave was in it all.
Yeah. Roger. Steve Pitzel. Tim James was Sigmund Freud. John Brownlee, Carla. You're all here. But what I was thinking about was getting the operetta done. So Scott had written an entire play. And then there was a 40-minute operetta. And I think we got the last lyrics on the day of opening. And thank goodness everyone was supposed to not know the lyrics so they could carry a script. And in it, Merl was able to go from a Strauss operetta, to the Beach Boys. Beautifully. And it would peak at the end, thank God for Steve Pitzel, wherever he is. And the applause and the love that came from that show. And that's just a small part of what Merl did. I just wanted to talk about that for a minute because the music, to me, is what I remember so much, and I wish we had it here more. But thank you. Thank you, Merl.
And now Suze.
Thank you.
One name, Suze.
Well, it's so wonderful to see so many people and many of whom I have not seen for maybe 35 years, maybe. Others are conduits, like Tim Fuller, who's still in Visible Theater's photographer. If you saw the Brick Burnside, the phone number is still 882-9791. Yes, things change. So I really was second wave and conduit to the third wave. And the thing I remember first was when Molly and I, both working at Arizona Theater Company, and she said, there's this great theater that has been forming. Come. We walked up the steps, and immediately it felt like home. And Merl and I had an immediate connection. Jersey boy, Jersey girl, magnets. So it was of the heart from the beginning. And so many things are memories. Merl was a present in the life of the Invisible Theater. Anytime he was in town, he came over. Anytime we needed something, he was there. In fact, and I have copies here, the Invisible Theater had its 40th anniversary 5 years ago, and Merl did a crossword puzzle for the item. And it's plays I'd like to see. So I have copies here, and the last couple of years ago when he was in town, stop by the theater, and if anybody, well, that's not it. When you come to Invisible Theater, if you look up, you'll see the first 20 years, history up there, graphically and photographs. And Steve, your picture is up there, and Brownlee, your picture is up there, and all of them, Becca, of course, and Paige, and Susie, all those photos are up there because we honor the past, we respect what we have accomplished, and that's everybody. That's everybody here, both audience and all of the artistic contributors. And I'd like to say, with my play Edith Head, that was one thing that we talked about that Merl wanted to see the last time. And so I'll use these words because he was truly authentic, as Rebecca said, truly kind. If you played Scrabble with him and you were excited about getting 3 points, he never made you feel stupid. He was always going, that's really good. So I would say in a world of knockoffs, Merl Regal was a true original. So here at Coffee.
Thank you, Susan. And now, dear Mark Heller. Where are you, Mark?
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Tim, Scott, Marie, everybody who had anything to do with this for Merl today. This is great. I, like all of you, loved Merl very much. In 1974, Merl and I became friends while working together in the Invisible Theater production of Mad Dog. A couple of things about Merl from that time stood out for me. First, how patient and willing Merl was in helping us learn his and Hal's beautifully complex songs. Second, it was pretty evident that Merl was a musical genius. Fast forward to 1979. I just moved out to LA, making a weak attempt at stand-up comedy, and Merl was holed up in a one-room apartment in Santa Monica at the time. You should have seen this place. It was like a tornado hit this thing. I walked in, I didn't see a bed, I didn't see anything except just stuff, papers everywhere, and before I could even turn around, Merl goes, "Merl's place." Anyway, he was really cranking out quite a few crossword puzzles. I hadn't seen Merl in almost 5 years, but there must have been some sort of connection made during Mad Dog because, well, he had this sort of exclusive relationship with Dell Magazine. He was making quite a few puzzles for them, but he was also selling some other puzzles to other publishers, and he didn't want to get in trouble with Dell, and he told me he was using the name Marge Heller. That was great. Merl was just a really fun guy to be around. His energy, as you all know, was so contagious. He's always laughing at life's absurdities, and it seemed like everything he said ended with an exclamation point. But as busy as he was, he always made time for our friendship. He once constructed a puzzle just for me, and since I was from Chicago, he made it about gangsters. I had an audition lined up for an improv group at the time. They wanted me to bring in an original commercial, sort of like those Saturday Night Live parodies. And Merl offered to write one for me. I guess there was this shampoo product on the market at the time called "Gee, your hair smells terrific." So Merl came up with this piece called "Gee, your nose hair smells terrific." Merl was always trying these strange dietary regimens in those days. We were at his favorite daytime hangout, the Sizzler, and I had just come back to the table with my lunch. And Merl's sitting there, he's working on a crossword puzzle, but right next to it is this enormous piece of chocolate cake. I said, "Merl, what about your diet?" He says, "No, this I can eat." And then he points to my food. He says, "Now that I can't have." It was during this time that Merl began writing screenplays. He gave me one to read titled "Satin Bullet." It was amazing. Then, soon after that, he hands me another one called Toy Works. This one's even better. I'm thinking we need to call Spielberg tomorrow. I'm really freaking out. Artistically speaking, he seemed to have no limits. His talent was simply mind-blowing. But the thing we most enjoyed together was music. We'd sit and listen to album after album for hours on end. When I gave myself a 50th birthday party in Tucson some 20 years later, Merl came over to the house the next day, and we just picked up where we left off, only playing CD tracks this time. We had lots of catching up to do, and it was a day I will always cherish. During those days in Southern California, I was privileged to be present for a private concert in Merl's Santa Monica apartment. He was playing his Hammond organ with the huge Leslie speakers, and he wanted me to hear this new music he had been working on. We recorded the session on a cassette, and I brought a copy with me today. It's pretty incredible. Even though Merl was extremely humble, as you all know, I think he knew how talented, truly talented he was. he was kind of paranoid about his music falling into the wrong hands because he hadn't had it copyrighted yet. I've always felt Merl's original music, be it the songs he wrote for theater or his own contemporary pop rock stuff, is some of the most beautiful music ever composed. As you all know, Merl's prowess with anagrams is legendary. When I first introduced Merl to my wife, Rhonda, he stuck out his hand and said, "Hard on, nice to meet you." Great sense of humor. Some years ago, Merl and Marie were in Chicago for a publishing convention. We all met at the Palmer House Hotel. We went up to the 4th floor to see the grand ballroom. And right there in the foyer was a baby grand just waiting for Merl. He promptly sat down, filled the beautiful old room with some great chords and lovely sound. Another very special moment. Even though Merl and I hadn't stayed real close in recent years, whenever we did speak, there was always genuine warmth and affection between us. A few months ago, my wife said I might want to check out The Simpsons on TV that night because a repeat of Merl's episode was on. I watched it till the end when Merl finally appears, and I got pumped up all over again. I told myself our call to Merl was way overdue, and I made a mental note to ring him up the next day. That next morning, the phone rang, and it was Scott to give me the incredibly sad news. I don't think a day has gone by since when I haven't thought about Merl. That in itself kind of says it all for me. Thanks for allowing me to share a few thoughts and memories about Merl with you today.
And now the voice that propelled many of our productions, Mr. Steve Pitzel.
Bugger in the morning, bugger in the evening, bugger, 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 bugger all night. I'm sorry, I just had to get that. Bill reminded me of some of those things that Merl would do with song titles and songs in general, and there's just one that I can never get out of my head. Weisenberg. Anyway, close to you is what that comes into, but I'm sorry, it's just there. I love Merl and will always love Merl. You talk about people who are something else. Merl truly was something else. I mean, I never knew anybody that could take words and music and information that nobody else could possibly keep in their head. He'd have it all in there. Not only have it, not only connect it together, but he'd connect it in a way that was absolutely incredible, unique, and funny. It was always entertaining. It was always funny. He had a sense of humor like nobody that I've ever known since. And I mean, you'd go to eat with Merl, and eating with Merl was a game. You know, it's like he loved his food spicy, and he loved to take all the implements on the table, you know, the salt shakers, whatever, and he would either play with them, build them into something. It was always something fun. And I think that was one of the things that I think I remember about Merl the most, is that, you know how humor, a lot of times, there's like there's a cynicism. Sometimes there's a meanness, sometimes there's a hurt that people are trying to get out or whatever. Merl didn't have that. If there was one thing Merl was missing, it was mean. There wasn't any meanness in Merl at all. And I think it's one of those things that just made him such a wonderful friend, on top of just being like the most talented person in the world. He was just a wonderful friend. I know when I first came out to Los Angeles, I had a check that no one would cash. I needed two people, and one of them was Merl. And if it wasn't for Merl, I mean, he became he was family. He was a mentor. He kind of, in a weird way, became like my dad in a way, and he got me through heartache. He saw the good times, the whole roller coaster of it. It kind of centered around Merl, and that apartment, which was something else. I mean, he had that Elka synthesizer he probably still has, and that big Leslie setup, and that was it. Besides all those papers, lying everywhere. And the thing is, I spent so much time in there. He spent so much time with me. We had such a great time, no matter what happened. And one thing I remember. You kind of remember your wedding anyway, I guess. But at the wedding, in the receiving line, as Merl was congratulating me, well, you can think of a wedding, I guess, as sort of a graduation. And Merl, who, was a man of many, many words, he had one word for me. And he didn't even say it. He actually wrote it on a piece of paper and shook my hand, and, I opened my hand. Plastics. That was his word of advice for me. That was Merl. He was a wonderful man. You had to love Merl. I love Merl. He loved all of us. He absolutely loved and adored you, Marie, as you know. We'll miss him, but he'll always be with us.
And now I'm going to move this one partition before I bring up my dear friend Scott Carter, who not only is going to talk.
Yeah. This is in my contract. I requested, I made
I'm messing up their lighting balance. But anyway, so not only is Scott one of the oldest friends. When I first was the Wildcat, I go to the first party, and the party I'm thinking is going to be the most fascinating group of fascinating, spontaneous people, and it is incredibly dull. Renee says, "Wait till Scott and Merl get here." I give you Scott Carter, the man who is the executive producer of not only the Bill Maher Show, Real Time, but of us right now. He made this all happen, and thank you, Scott, for everything you've done.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, everybody. Aaron, Bill Ball, Marie, and I also want to just thank two people at the beginning for whom nothing happens here if not for Dennis Hacking starting the Invisible Theater, and then Susan Clausen keeping it going all these years, and it's going to go well into the future. And may all of us live our... Yes, let's give that hand of applause. May all of us live lives so that we are all as well remembered as Merl has been today. And I'm sorry about some of the length of this, but the best copy editor that I will ever know was not available to clean up my text. P.G. Wodehouse once wrote, "As we grow older and we realize more clearly the limitations of human happiness, we come to see that the only real and abiding pleasure in life is to give pleasure to other people." And that pleasure of giving pleasure to others abided in Merl Regal. His always buzzing brain was a toy store, a candy shop, a secret garden, an arcade, and Aladdin's cave of sparkling, whirring, smile-inducing, or laugh-out-loud treasures. He was a one-man band. He was a three-ring circus. He was a box of Cracker Jacks. He was a fortune cookie. A denizen of diners, Merl was a bottomless cup of coffee. He was a riddle wrapped in a melody inside a pun. He was our Huckleberry friend. He was a close-up magician, anagrammizing our names, and if Merl were here, he would say probably that anagrammizing is not a word. When we heard Merl coming into a room, we became kids in our front yard listening to the sound of the approaching ice cream truck. No mind ever accumulated a bigger Xanadu warehouse of units of delight. And Merl did not hoard his bounty, he shared it. He gave it to us and thousands of fans not lucky enough to know him or be loved by him as a friend, though some of those less lucky think they know him because they have been tickled by his talent. When Tim Fuller called to tell me that Merl had died, images over decades popped into my head, a preloaded photo gallery that I hadn't known was there. Chests and hearts and please Merl, no more Mad Libs, and chef's salads at Louis' lower level, and Gort Clateau Nicto Barada, Thai iced tea, missile command, yellow Bic pens with blue caps in his right hand that seemed to hook around the page when he wrote, the chain around his neck with some special meaning that he would never reveal, Merl telling waiters at Hunan restaurants that he wanted his food extra, extra spicy, it can never be too spicy. His El Camino, everyone's go-to vehicle on moving day. Not your shade of green, he would yell to any car slow to react to a change of light. Or how, when he drove west on 6th Street at Euclid Avenue, he would always shout, Euclid! But then my memory settled into a few iconic Merl images that I want to share with you. I met Merl in 1971 at the Arizona Daily Wildcat, where as copy editor, he ran the desk like a combo blackjack dealer, talk show host, chess master taking on all comers, or a vaudevillian keeping plates on sticks spinning. As he edited articles, scrubbing the usage errors or typos, he'd also conduct multiple conversations, rating albums, rock groups, novels, movies, cartoons from the 40s, TV shows from the 50s. Lulls in conversation were filled by his popping riddles on us, or singing the snatch of a song, or producing this blasting cap loud noise that he could make with his knuckles. Or playing an imaginary drum kit, repeat snatch of song, reveal answer to riddle, and then, how did he do it? Here came the perfect headline to the now ready article he'd been working on the whole time. For a sedentary man, Merl was always in motion. I knew that I'd been accepted into his circle of trust because he always excused my sloppy copy. And we became friends, and he became regular at my folks' house, not because I didn't know what he knew, but I knew different things than he knew. I knew that Samuel Beckett was a genius, and so was Brian Wilson. And when I was arts editor, Merl first produced things later done on bigger stages, album reviews, concert reviews, and a weekly crossword puzzles. We also started writing plays together, and I don't think originally we knew where they were going to go. We just did it, usually in diners. I recently came across, when I had been looking through things, this one-act play that he wrote by himself, never produced, about a college-age boy, which was Merl's age at the time, named Lonnie, who wakes up in a hospital bed to learn that he survived a car accident, but that part of one of his legs had to be amputated. And the short play ends with Lonnie making the bold, defiant choice to get an old-fashioned peg leg like Long John Silver. So for Merl, tragedy is transformed into a conversation piece, a work of art. And the place that that story came from in Merl struck a deep kinship in me, though both of us had some sense of maybe we had some talent. He had a lot more than I did. Neither of us had a clue as to how to forge a career. And in the fall of '71, when I was first becoming we were really becoming friends then, because I was working on the Wildcat full-time then. Just weeks after I'd had a devastating romantic rejection, I was driving my car out of my house one Sunday evening, and I ran over our family dog. And I stopped the car, and I got out, and I picked her up. She was still breathing, but she died by the time I got to the vets. And next day was Monday, and when Merl heard this, he didn't say anything, but he led me to the basement of the U of A music building, where he found a tiny, empty, acoustic tiled room with a beat-up, upright piano. And with no room for a chair, I just sat in the corner on the floor, cross-legged and silent, as I heard for the first time Merl playing the piano. I think he started with Crystal Ship by the Doors, and then next I think came the Munsters theme. And then he segued into his own songs. Now, some of his songs were rockers, but many were just hauntingly beautiful ballads. Gothy, minor chords, spooky but romantic. And in the coming days, we repeated this ritual of piano noir, and I emerged from my gloom appreciating that he had let me in on how he self-soothed his own wounds and tamed demons that could not be slayed by games. And that music, and much more, gloriously found a home in the Invisible Theater, which Merl anagrammed into I Believe in the Arts. And it was Merl who enlisted Hal Robbins to write lyrics, and together their work was in heavy rotation on my personal playlist throughout the middle 70s, and they remain in my pantheon today. When I first knew Merl, and I think some of the early speakers were mentioning this, you know, he had completely different ambitions. I first knew that he was going to become a novelist, that's what he wanted, and plan B was journalism, but the truth is, he had enough talents for 5 lifetimes. And puzzle fans, were the most fortunate recipients of his gift of crosswords, and to them, a debt of thanks is owed to Marie, bringer of love to his life and puzzles to the world. In November of 2014, Merl and Marie and I had a dinner one night in a bistro in the Westwood section of Los Angeles, where I become a regular during the run of my play at the Geffen. And as always, it was like an hour and a half that we talked. We talked about politics and movies and puzzles and, of course, our Invisible Theater days. And then the three of us strolled to the theater. Merl had crafted a puzzle for the program called Intersecting Lives, and the answers all related to Jefferson, Dickens, Tolstoy, and Jesus. And I had told him that Amy, one of the ushers at the Geffen, was a fan of his, and so when we entered the lobby, she had a stack of Merl books for him to sign, and he brought a puzzle present for her. Now, it was in the middle of the week, I think maybe it was a Wednesday night, and it was a production week for me, so I couldn't stay for the play. I'd seen it before. So the three of us hugged goodbye, and then he and Marie entered the auditorium. But I didn't leave right away. I snuck back in the other aisle than the one they had gone into to watch them as the play started. And there was Merl's smiling, expectant face, always pulling for a show to be good, always pulling for a friend, and the house lights dimmed and fade to black. He emailed me afterwards to say how much he loved the show, and later when it was published, he proofread the text for me. But that was the last time that I would ever see him. And now, like our old Wildcat newsroom, or the Gallagher Theater, or Louis' Lower Level, or the cellar where all of our shows were performed, he is gone, except on the printed page and in our hearts. And preparing for today, I tracked down, some of these are outside here, relics of the true Merl, posters, reviews, programs, and letters dating back to 1976 from him and from many of the people who are in this room right now. And I felt like one of Merle's favorite plays was Our Town by Thornton Wilder, and I felt like the dead Emily, who at the end of the show wants to revisit the world, and she's told by the stage manager, well, if you're going to revisit the world, pick an ordinary day, because it will be important enough. And so I opened with anticipating ordinary letters from Carla and Bob and John and Susie and Rebecca and Paige and Mark and Frank and a lot of the rest of you. But then just as like Emily, I was overwhelmed, how she was overwhelmed by the young and beautiful ghost family going about their everyday lives. I read a few heartbreakingly beautiful, penned or typed words by young, beautiful, talented, hopeful friends who, like I, thought we had all the time in the world. And Justice Emily soon begged to return to her Grover's Corners grave. I put the letters back in their box, perhaps to be read on another day, perhaps at a future de facto IT reunion, a brigadoon of palpable energy validating Dennis's choice of calling the theater invisible. And until then, let us now praise Merl Regal, who made all of our lives extra, extra spicy.
Well, wait till Scott and Merl get together. That was lovely, Scott. And now we come to part 4. San Francisco, Santa Monica, Marie, Tampa, crosswords. But most of all, Marie. You know, through this afternoon, we've all been told and we remember what a remarkable person Merl was. He was a genius. He really had a particular kind of genius, not to make beautiful crosswords, but to discover a way of making crossword puzzles that had never existed, that would make me, who never liked crosswords, look at it and I would be puzzled and I'd go, there's no answer, and then all of a sudden I would just laugh out loud. It was like stand-up crosswords. It was brilliant. But with all of that, Merl would never have been this force that has created this presence in the world and the amount of fans he had without Marie. Without Marie's thinking about how this should be done, bringing ideas to the keeping of the copyright, all of those things. Marie made that happen. And this is Marie who is our
It's amazing to see all of you and to almost feel like I'm discovering a whole new territory, a whole new country called Merl Regal. He was astonishing, and you all have acknowledged that. I met him in Santa Monica in a deli. It was very, very early in the morning. We were both early risers. And I always say that if we were night owls and early birds,
we would never have gotten together. It was because we were both early birds and we were always excited about the beginning of the day that we happened to go into the same deli. And he was sitting at the counter, and there was a pass-through. And I sat politely on one side of the pass-through, and he sat on the other. He was trying to chat up a very attractive waitress. And I could watch her, and I saw, she's not getting this man who has this amazing depth of detail. What he was talking about was a film I had just seen. He was telling her in exquisite detail about Stephen King's The Shining. Now, The Shining is not usually your most romantic flick. But I had just seen it, and I realized that I was actually watching it again like somebody had just thrown a projection right onto the wall. And so I thought, okay, this is a very extraordinary person. Who could he possibly be? So because I'm kind of bold and willing to jump in when I don't know any strangers, I just said, okay, I peppered him with questions. Who are you? What are you doing here? What kind of work do you do? What kind of background do you have? And slowly but surely he started to warm up to this obnoxious person, and he answered these questions. We talked for about 2 hours. I drank probably 2 pots of coffee. He said he had to go. I slid off the stool. My kidneys were aching from the amount of coffee I drank, and I followed him home. So for a period of time, we were just great friends. All of you talk about getting on the phone and talking to Merl, and that's basically, he was like a girlfriend in a way. I'd get on the phone, I'd call him up, and we would go through conversations. We like film, we like theater, and that's where we met, in language and in storytelling. I was doing extremely well financially at that time. I was selling diagnostics to laboratories, and I had to entertain doctors at night, and my mind tends to fail about 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. And I had an unlimited expense account. I had to take the doctors out to dinner, and I thought, maybe if I bring my friend Merl, he can do the entertaining. He needs to eat. And that became our dog and pony show all over Southern California. One of the things, and I have to admit I'm an incredibly slow study, I was actually dating a couple of people during this period of time. I was thinking, well, Merl's younger. He's got this amazing ability in language. He has a great ability in music. I'd already seen that. I don't. So is this a lifelong companion for me? I couldn't quite see it. And yet, every time I went back to Tampa, every time I opened my mouth to talk to my folks, the only words that seemed to come out of my mouth was, Merl said this, Merl said that. And the echo started to happen in my mind, and I realized that the person in my mind consistently was Merl. Then one day, Merl didn't have much money, and he had to buy some underwear. And so we had to go down. He wanted a ride in my car down to the Fox Hills Mall in Los Angeles, and I said, sure, let's do it. Okay, I'll just take you down there. And we got to the Fox Hills Mall. We were going to a Penny's, and we got on the escalator. And it was like an epiphany. We're going up the escalator, and Merl is telling me I don't know if you know R. Crumb, the cartoonist, the outrageously funny, irreverent San Francisco cartoonist, and he is doing R. Crumb for me. And I think, whoa, wait a minute. I see what's intended. I'm going to be poor. Very, very poor. But by God, I'm going to be happy. And that's exactly the moment I knew where we were going. But as life has it, and because of my background in marketing and sales, I sat down with Merl and we started to talk about this outrageously wonderful gift he had for puzzles and for language. And I said, Merl, you're selling your wonderful puzzles to people that don't even appreciate how different and special you are. Why don't we try to get, and so I gave him a 3-point plan. 3 points, that's all. I said, what we'll do is we'll try to get a newspaper that becomes your flagship newspaper. And then we'll try to talk a few other newspapers into having you as a syndication. And then if we get really, really lucky, we will gather those puzzles together, and in a few years, we'll bind them together, and we'll sell books. That was it. That was the game plan. And I thought, well, okay, maybe we'll make a few $1,000s extra a year, or just enough to quilt together our lives financially. Well, once again, that wasn't in the cards. That game plan of Merl and his astonishing ability became quite manifest as soon as he got the job for the San Francisco Examiner. And Merl, being Merl, on April 1st, he puts a puzzle out there that says that he has been hired by the New York Times and he was leaving, and you can't be funny forever. Unless, of course, you're Merl Rico. And what happened was the letters flooded in. And so this idea, I was planning on doing the book maybe a few years later. I said, no, Merl. We're going to hit Christmas this year. And what I did do, we didn't have a lot of money, and what I did do is I looked around, I looked for a role model. And my role model of all people was Matt Groening. Matt Groening also didn't have much money, but a hell of a lot of talent, and Merl and I loved his cartoons. And so what we did was I went to a couple of printers, and I took Matt Groening's book, which was just black and white, staple stitched, and not much to it. And I threw it, and I said, "This is what we can afford. What will 2,000 copies cost?" And he gave me a figure, and it was something we could afford. And I'm thinking, well, okay, we'll sell it, and maybe in 3 or 4 years, we'll get all our money back. In 7 weeks, we'd sold out the first run. I was wrong again. I was consistently wrong. Not poor, selling books that I thought would take years to sell. And that was really how our life in terms of doing our business, our syndication. I just thought that Merl had a great God-given talent, and you have all attested to it. When my mother got Alzheimer's disease in Tampa, Florida, and we were planning actually to go to Portland, Oregon. We'd actually picked out a house in Portland, Oregon, one which we could afford on our still relatively modest income. We had to completely change our plans in a heartbeat. I had to sell everything. Merl thought, oh, Portland, Santa Monica. No. It was going to be Tampa, Florida. And my dad had just ducked out of a heart attack. And I remember calling Merl and I said, this Alzheimer's is really awful. I'm seeing my mother become a child. I have to watch her every second. You, Merl, have a God-given talent. to engage people's minds in a way very, very few people can. So it's incumbent on you to maybe do a contest for Alzheimer's. It will help them. Well, once again, what I thought would be easy took 15 years. But we did do our first contest at the end of, I think it was 2010, 2011. We finally got a green light. It was a national contest. It was absolutely brilliant. It had to do with, and I think I will tell you this, one of my heroes was Jonathan Swift, and he became the final answer. And what you don't probably know is that Jonathan Swift died of Alzheimer's disease. And what you probably also don't know is Jonathan Swift gave all his money to a hospital in Ireland for the care of the demented because he could not bear to see how people that had mental problems are treated by others, belittled, marginalized. And he had an amazing social conscience and heart. And that's what became our first contest. So you now see, I mean, I felt like, why get up and talk? Most of you have basically very well laid out our lives wonderfully. But I am going to finish with one final letter from a person I also deeply admire, who would ask for whatever reason, I guess we all know for what reason, who deeply admired Merl. This man wrote us a letter in 1998. It was on September the 27th. He wrote a wonderfully detailed letter from the heart. I opened up Merl's mail and I walked into the computer room and I handed the letter to Merl and I said, I don't know, there's a man out there who absolutely loves you, who can really write like a Thomas Hardy, and he's written you a love letter. So I handed it to Merl, and the letter came from Stephen Zalian, the screenwriter for Schindler's List, Awakenings, Falcon and the Snowman, and here it was like a mutual admiration society. I loved his work, he loved Merl's work. And because of that letter, and because I don't see Lou Moore. Oh, back there's Lou Moore. Lou Moore is one of the main characters in our life. He played a pivotal role in our life. Merl got cancer in 2001, and it looked really bad, and I was really, really scared. And Merl had always been too modest to actually approach Stephen Zalian. And I knew when that diagnosis came that the one thing I didn't want to see happen was Merl never speaking or meeting Stephen Zalian. And I called up Lou, and I said, Lou, Merl's really sick. Can you get me the telephone number of Stephen Zalian? And he said, I can't do that, Marie, but I can call his house. And he got his wife on the phone, and Lou said, he knows you, he knows you, he knows you. And we brokered a deal, and Stephen Zalian called Merl in the hospital. Irony of ironies, and the very reason we took Merl to the hospital, that hospital, for the acute pancreatitis that Merl had, was because he had gotten such wonderful care for the cancer. But this story and what they did in that hospital was not good. They didn't take care of him. They didn't try. And you are all sitting here because they just didn't care that much. And you ask, how do I feel? People come up and ask all the time. And what I'll tell you? Anger, sorrow, and trying to figure out how I'm going to handle what I am now living with on a moment-to-moment basis. So Here is the letter, the second letter from Stephen Zalian, because it does talk to me after Merle has passed away. Dear Marie, when I wrote that first letter to Merle long ago, I couldn't have imagined I'd be writing this one. I am saddened by the circumstances, but share this with you in gratitude to and in celebration of Merle. Back then, when I wrote to him, I knew him only from his crosswords. I didn't know what he looked like or what he sounded like, and knew nothing of his past or personal life. But if someone had taken a class photo of the people I admired at that time, Merle would have been in it. There is a relationship between a puzzle maker, and you've all touched on this very closely. There is a relationship between a puzzle maker and his solvers, but it's one-sided since we are unknown to him and contribute nothing to it. Unlike, say, chess, where someone makes a move and the other person makes one in reaction, and so on, the puzzle maker has already made all the moves, leaving us to figure out what he's done on the board. He may have gotten satisfaction in creating the puzzle, but we get more because by solving it, we also get to know something about him. And with a puzzle maybe if someone as clever as Merle, we're able to peek into a mind that's much more clever than ours. This is how I first got to know Merle, in this one-sided but special relationship where he challenged and delighted me week after week. For me, doing one of his crosswords was like being entertained by a great raconteur. That's what led me to writing him that first letter, and then to our eventual first meeting, in which I got to see how his mind worked in person. Sitting there at that table, I was struck by how similar our conversation was to those I had had with him, so to speak, doing his puzzles. His observations and references and playfulness with language, his inability to see diagrams all around him on a menu, on a billboard, that other people would just read for what they were. The first thing he observed about me was that if my name ended with a Z instead of an N, it would be a palindrome. Something I certainly should have noticed at some point in my life, but never had. But it was his choice of words that really gave me a glimpse into how his mind worked. He didn't say if you change the N to a Z, it would be a palindrome. He said if you knocked it over, which told me he didn't just think about words and phrases, he saw the patterns in them. Like an artist might see what he will paint, or a musician might hear what he will compose. I thought that was interesting. Like a musician that would hear what he might compose. It occurred to me as I was chatting with him that first time just how unusual and special and specific his gifts were. How wonderful it was that he had found a way to use his unique mind and those talents to both earn a livelihood and to give us such joy. They say we met, the way we met, the nature of our relationship, and of course Merle himself, made him a rare and unexpected friend. I miss him terribly, like so many other people. And when he died on Tuesday, I got a call from his office, and they said, we need your address, where he said, Stephen is sending you a big bouquet of flowers. And he also said, I have to tell you, he's been in his office crying since Saturday. So yeah, he gave great joy, and now we miss him terribly. Every single one of us, at many different levels, and for many different reasons. So now I was going to say, finally, you're probably wondering what's going forward. What's going forward for our puzzle business is there are a lot of newspapers that want to keep Merle. They would rather have a dead Merle's recycled puzzles, updated, re-edited, than somebody new. I get emails all the time, and there are all of the Washington Post syndicate wants it. Many of the little newspapers that we're already in want it, and what I'm hoping to do is to extend that to other papers so that I can help bring the joy of Merle to a lot of people, because I know it's out there. And finally, the last thing I will say, every day is a struggle. We had planned to move to Tucson part-time in 2016 because of all of you, because of all the musicians, because of the chance to make music. And of course, now I have to deal, and I have to look around at all the homes, and no, that's just not in the cards. Thank you. Oh, I do have one other thing.
Marie mentions Mark Groening. We have, are we able to play the 3 clips now? So we've got 3 clips we'd like to show you, and then Marie has something she'd like to tell us at the very end of this. Can we turn off the backlights maybe? Or...
I actually wrote that crossword. And I edited it. Now get back to crosswording. Yes, sir. Right from the start, Merl loved the idea of making puzzles with as few black squares and as many wide open white squares as possible. I've now put my theme answers in where they will go for maximum use of the space so that the diagram still breathes a little. And now I'm just looking at it to see if the down possibilities have any problems. You want to sniff out these tough areas immediately when you're constructing. The only spot I have here that's even remotely like that is this blank Y, blank, blank Y. Right there. I mean, there are words that go in there, my way, pygmy, a couple of other things. But this word next to it, A blank, blank, A blank, if all the ones I've said for here, this is a consonant. My day, that's a D. Pygmy, that's a G. So if that's a consonant, this has to be a vowel. And how many vowels can you think of that go A, vowel, blank, A, blank, and still we're going to lead into this really important area so that words can come down. And the only one I can think of for this is a fragment, like by any, but I need that to be a vowel, like by any means possible. Then from here, consonant, vowel, and almost anything I want. This is going to be almost anything. I'm just going to make sure that I can come down from here. So what I'm thinking of is that this is going to be a word that ends like this, and that this is going to be a word that either ends with S down here, or it can be something rather colorful, I'm not sure. But this is going to be like something like a G, and maybe this is going to be an E also. I just thought of something that's going to work.
I want to make one final announcement before we have a clip that's kind of special. Because people want to keep Merle's, they want to celebrate Merle and do things to honor Merle into the future in many, many different ways. The American Crossword Puzzle Tournament, which will take place, I believe it's the April 1st, and 1st through 3rd in Connecticut, wants to do a special little something for Merle. At the next American Crossword Puzzle Tournament held at Stamford Marriott in Stamford on April 1st through 3rd, the first annual Merle Regal Award will be given to the crossword constructor who makes us laugh, makes us think, makes us love crosswords, or all of the above. So they're playing
If you've got it on your phone, we can do it here.
Oh, do you have it?
The thumb drive's here.
Yep.
Okay, can we hear that now?
Sure.
Do you want to introduce it, Marie?
Oh, this is something that we've captured. I thought this was quite a wonderful way to complete the program. Scott brought it up, and I thought it was great. We have something in our office that I will probably never change. And you will hear what it is, because it's such a total reminder of Merle's humor, and in many ways, exactly where we are today, because Merle is not physically present anymore. Go ahead.
Oh, we don't have it? Okay, then I'm going to do it this way. You've got it. You've got my phone here.
Marie, while we're waiting, I just wanted to say, my name is Nora Booth, and I went to high school. How many of you can stand up and went to high school with Merl that are here? Stand up so you can see. It's like a high school reunion for us. And I'm sure everyone here can say something really wonderful. For me, Merl was really important to me because he came to my house, helped me get my first article published in the Tucson Star, or the Citizen. He was a Citizen at that time, and it just changed my life. And I'm eternally grateful to him. Thank you.
Hi there, this is Marie, and Merl's around somewhere. Just leave your name and number, and one of us will get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks.
So I have to tell you, it's been an honor having everybody here, remembering Merl. Thank you all for coming. It's been an extraordinary ride to have this man in our lives, and it's been an extraordinary ride to listen to everybody speak about it. And thanks again to Marie for her guide.